In the heart of a forgotten village, nestled deep within the woods, there was a house that no one dared to approach. The windows were shattered, the walls covered in vines, and a strange chill lingered around it, even on the warmest days. Locale. Legend spoke of a family that once lived there, but they disappeared without a trace. Some said they had fled. Others whispered darker stories, but none could say for sure what had happened. The house stood silent, its dark silhouette cutting through the fog that rolled in every evening. At night, if you listened closely, you could hear faint whispers carried on the wind, like voices from the past, echoing through the trees. They seemed to call out to anyone brave enough to venture near. A curious traveler named John had heard these rumors on his journey through the village. His heart raced with excitement rather than fear. He had always sought the mysterious, the unexplained. The thought of uncovering the truth behind the house was too tempting to resist. So, one evening, when the sun dipped below the horizon, he decided to make his way toward it. The path was overgrown, and the woods seemed unnaturally silent as he walked. The trees towered above him, their branches intertwining like fingers reaching out to grab him. The deeper he went, the colder it became, the air thick with an unsettling stillness. Every step he took seemed to echo, as if the forest itself was watching him. When he finally arrived at the house, it looked even more menacing than he had imagined. The roof was caved in at places, and the door hung on its hinges, creaking with every gust of wind. But it was the feeling of being watched that unsettled him the most. He hesitated for a moment, but then, with a deep breath, he pushed the door open. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the smell of decay. The floor creaked beneath his feet as he stepped into the dark, empty hallways. The only light came from the flickering moon outside, casting eerie shadows on the walls. As John walked deeper into the house, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was not alone. The whispers began. At first, they were faint, like distant voices carried on the wind, but soon they grew louder, clearer. He turned, expecting to see someone behind him, but there was nothing. The whispers seemed to come from the walls themselves, creeping into his mind, urging him to go deeper. John's heart began to race as he moved further into the house. The rooms were empty, their furnishings long gone, but there was something about the space that made it feel alive, as though it was holding on to the memories of those who had once lived there. In one room, he found old photographs scattered. On the floor, their edges curling and yellowed with age. The faces in the photos were blurred, their expressions twisted in a way that made his stomach turn. He picked one up, examining it closely. The photo seemed to pulse in his hands, and for a moment, he thought he saw the faces in the picture move, their eyes following him. He dropped the photo, his pulse quickening, and rushed out of the room. The whispers grew louder now, almost deafening. It was as if the house itself was alive, feeding off his fear. He stumbled down the hallway, desperate to escape. But the house seemed to stretch on forever, the walls closing in around him. Every turn he took led him to another dark, empty room, each one more oppressive than the last. Suddenly, the floor beneath him gave way. He fell, tumbling into a pitch-black basement. He landed hard on the cold stone floor, his body aching, but there was no time to rest. The whispers were now a constant buzz in his ears, like 1,000 voices speaking all at once. He tried to stand, but his legs were weak. As his eyes adjusted to the darkness, he saw something moving in the shadows. A figure. At first it was a blur, but then it became clearer. A tall, gaunt figure standing just beyond the reach of the dim light. It stared at him, its face obscured by a hood. John opened his mouth to scream, but no sound came out. The figure moved closer, its long fingers reaching for him. He tried to back away, but his body wouldn't respond. The whispers grew louder, more urgent, as if they were coming from the figure itself. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the figure vanished into the shadows. John was left in silence, trembling with fear. The whispers stopped, but the stillness felt worse than the noise. He could feel the weight of the house pressing down on him, the air growing thick with something he couldn't quite name. With every ounce of strength left in him, John crawled toward the stairs. He had to get out. He had to leave. But as he reached the top of the stairs, he saw something that made his blood run cold. The door he had entered through was now gone, replaced by a wall of solid stone. Panic set in as he pounded on the wall, trying to break through. But it was no use. The house was alive, and it was trapping him. The whispers returned, but now they were no longer faint. They were clear, distinct, and full of malice. "You should have never come here," they said, their voices dripping with venom. John froze, his blood running cold as the realization hit him. He wasn't going to leave, not alive. The last thing he saw before the darkness consumed him was the figure, standing in the corner of the room, its eyes glowing in the